All right, we are live, and I want to say hello, hello, hello to everyone. We finally got our social profiles up and running, so this would be the first official live stream directly to our TEDx Alexander Park pages, and also, of course, my personal platform, which I love to use my platform to promote ideas we're spreading. For those of you who do not know who I am Daryl Stinson. I'm a two-time TEDx speaker and a best-selling author. I'm also the license holder here at TEDx Alexander Park. What I do for TEDx Alexander Park is a volunteer initiative. For those of you who are unfamiliar with TEDx, it is an independently licensed organization of TED. And it is nonprofit, and it is all about elevating ideas within communities and spreading ideas that we believe will impact our communities and our world. Our theme for this year is Back to the Basics, and it's based on the Lorax movie that where essentially the planet got almost destroyed and wiped out because people were focused on profit over people. And I feel as if our world is facing similar challenges. We might not be one truffless seed away from destruction, but there's a lot of division, there's a lot of greed, there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of strife going on. And I feel like the way that we heal our planet, the way that we better our world, the way that we empower our families is by sowing good seeds into the earth, by valuing people over profits, over greed, over selfishness. And I can't think of a better person to come on an interview today than Mr. Ramon over here, who I had the privilege of meeting at a Rotary Club event here by hosted by my good friend Amy Daughtery. And I tell you what struck out about him to me, and then I'll kind of let him riff. You guys can stop listening at me. But he started to tell the about his organization, Thrive Coworking, which he is the founder of. And he shared a backstory about that, and there was a lot of vulnerability in that story. I'm trying not to rob from him, but there's a lot of vulnerability in that story. And y'all know I communicate. I'm all about vulnerable communication. And so that was like the first initial thing. Like, man, this guy's at a Rotary Club getting really vulnerable right now. Like, I like that. He's got guts. He's got
Yeah.
humility, and also his passion to bringing together community. It's a part of their business model, but it's also just deeply ingrained into his heart. And so we struck up a conversation. It was like, we got to connect. I still have yet to be out to visit the spaces that you are pioneering, but I'd love to learn more about that, hear about your ideas, and just be able to spread good ideas and good energy across the planet to our listeners. This is your first time tuning in. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And remember, if you hear anything of value today, let's engage in the comments and share this with other people. The way that we start to spread what this word is through people like you sharing the profile. So don't be selfish with that share button. Just go ahead and click share. My good friend, that's the formalities for today. Let's hop in.
Great.
Man, I'd love to just dive right into your story. Tell us about like how you got to where you are today into leading this movement around Thrive co-working spaces.
Yeah, sure. Excited to be here. I love talking with you, of course, and telling people about what we're doing. It matters a lot, right? It matters a lot to me and to our team. And so, some of the backstory is kind of related to my personal journey and story. And I don't know that I'll go into super granular detail, but basically been through like lots of ups and downs, and spent a season of my life where I was just so focused on proving my worth, trying to build my own empire, just trying to make a lot of money, right? And I had some success with that, and then I had a collapse essentially back in 07, 08, right? The economy was starting to really sort of cave in back then, and I was dealing with some of the difficulties and struggles associated with that, and it was like this purifying fire, right? It was like a moment in my life where I started to realize what mattered. I was on that track of like profit over people, like the movie that you were sort of referring to, and I was about to fall into that trap potentially for the rest of my life. And even though it was incredibly painful to deal with, the struggles, then I'm very grateful for those moments because it was really transformative for me. So having gone through those financial struggles and having sort of watched my first business kind of fall apart, I left that season with just a renewed sort of sense of meaning and purpose in life. And I recognized, like, you know what, like whatever it is that I do with my life, it's got to be for something. I've got to sort of fight for others, not for myself. It's got to have an element that is purposeful and a community that can kind of like share in that work. And so these ideas and these thoughts about what I wanted my life to be like started to kind of come into play at that season. And it wasn't a straight line to where I am now. I started another company between that one and this one, and built it and sold it and made some money, and it was fine. And I tried to incorporate good into it, and it was just a bit of a challenge. But ultimately, back in 2015 is when I started Thrive Coworking. And I started Thrive Coworking because of my obsession to kind of like create a platform through which I could influence other businesses to do good and to value people over profits, like you kind of mentioned before, and be intentional about how they kind of invest in their communities and almost be reckless in that respect, because I have an overall philosophy on how that can kind of pay dividends. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. But started in 2015 and started in a small space in downtown Alpharetta. Went through some difficulties there, ultimately opened a few spaces, and then was about to really grow quickly. And COVID happened. And that was a big challenge. Almost actually lost the business then, and but came through it.
Mm.
During that time in COVID, I was really able to kind of refine the concept, and I have a partner in all these things too. His name is Chris Smith, and we were refining the concept as it relates to our nonprofit, which is the Thrive Initiative. And so did a lot of planning for that, a lot of sort of preparation came through COVID, and we've been building for the launch of our nonprofit, and ended up doing that just a couple months ago, really. And so that takes us to today, where we've got our co-working business, which has sort of overcome the whole COVID issue. We've gotten some additional investment, and we're opening new locations. And we've just launched our nonprofit called the Thrive Initiative, like I mentioned, and excited about the growth and the opportunity for both. So here we are.
Mm, I love it. You mentioned just the challenges that you faced, almost losing the business during the pandemic, and I know that that's a story that's very common for a lot of people, and a lot of people lost their business.
Mhm.
There's still a good number of people who are still in the after effects of that, still trying to figure out how to pivot in the post pandemic world, as some call it. Would love for you to share any advice that maybe you might have for people who are still trying to rebuild after a period like that. What was it for you that really helped you to persevere during that time?
Mhm.
And any insight you may have.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think you just have to really, really have a passion and a sense of joy and purpose for what you do in order to really like even have a chance to overcome it. That doesn't mean that you're gonna, but for me, if it wasn't for those things, if I didn't believe in what we were doing so much, I wouldn't have made it. Not even close. It was too hard. When I was laying in bed in the morning, just not wanting to get out of bed, didn't really see the way out. Um, but just sort of one day at a time, chipped away at the problem. So in terms of advice, these moments are ones that are opportunities to kind of really reassess and figure out, okay, this thing that I'm fighting for, is it worth it? Like, do I still love this? Do I want to do this? Right. And if the answer is no, then this is a great opportunity to sort of explore what could be next.
Mm,
If the answer is yes, then really scale everything back into like really short increments, a day at a time, right?
mhm, mm,
And just focus on the things that you have to get done that day. Know what's before you, know where you need to get to in order to overcome the challenge, but then understand them on a daily level, and
mhm.
only focus on the work of that day. Because you can exhaust yourself emotionally if you're spending the majority of your time thinking about the enormity of the obstacles that you have to overcome, and it's going to make it impossible for you to do so.
Mm,
So I think that's some pretty good practical advice. I'm a Christian, so for me, I anchor all of these things in my faith. So a
Mm.
big part of it for me is staying grounded in that and prayer and church and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of what comes to mind for me when it comes to dealing with these kind of tough times and tough moments.
Yeah. So for you, when you think about the passion that you have to make sure that you're committed to in order to persevere through challenging times, what was it for you? What was that passion? What was that thing that you're like, okay, yeah, I still am committed to this thing because I care deeply about it?
So I think the best way to put it is to kind of tell you about our mission statement. So our mission statement is to leverage the power of enterprise as a force for good and to inspire others to do the same. And again, I'm Christian, so everything for me is, for the glory of God, right?
Hmm.
But if you look at like the first part of that mission statement, like that's me. Like I need that to happen. That's what I'm supposed to do with my life. And I'm not the only one that's doing that. There are other people that are really motivated to do good work in that regard. But I just couldn't give up on it. I can't imagine myself doing anything else but leading an organization that works on those things. So we do that through our co-working business and our nonprofit, and they're both kind of integrated. And maybe this is a moment to kind of give folks a better understanding of what our nonprofit is, because all I've done is sort of said like we've got a nonprofit, right? And so and like yeah, like we're trying to be a force for good. Okay, well, Ramon, like how are you doing that, right? So what we noticed when we opened some of our earlier locations was that like the business community, like the shops and the restaurants that were in our vicinity, were really motivated to get the business of our customer base, like our co-working members.
Hmm.
Was we took like their willingness to sort of offer discounts to our members because they were doing that, and we kind of created a business model around it that was a force for good, right? So essentially, we started a nonprofit, and in every city that we go to now, we create a coalition of shops and restaurants that give discounts to people that give to local charities. That's kind of how it works. And so you can go onto an app that we built and you can pick a cause that sort of is close to your heart and you can donate to it through Change Roundup. So you'll designate a credit card, you'll put that information in. Anytime you use that credit card anywhere in the world, the extra change goes to the nonprofit. But you get 10 to 20% discounts on your favorite shops and restaurants, right? So for us, we're actively promoting that way of being generous to our membership base. We're working with companies on leveraging it as a platform for their employees so they can get signed up, so their company could be more engaged in the community, can be a force for good. So, and there's lots of detail I can go into there, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use our platform. We're trying to use some technology. We're trying to use our influence with different businesses to raise money and to support communities all over the country.
Mm, mm. Love that. It looks like my wife agrees. She said that's an awesome idea. Thank you,
Oh,
sweetie.
cool.
Looking
Yeah.
good over there with your profile picture, sweetie.
I love that.
Oh, love that. Love that. Um, Man, lots of things we can dive into in terms of what you said. But one of the things that I love about that is just the commitment to community, the commitment to getting everyone to buy in.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me about why you feel that's important, and even if you want to share a little bit of like, I mean, how do you get people to buy in? A lot of people, there's a lot of talk about the worker shortage that happens and that's happening. A lot of scarcity going around. A lot of people doing this right now, and
Yes.
here you are knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, let's do this. Let's share. Let's collaborate. Let's offer discounts. Let's round up." I'm just curious to
Oh,
learn
man.
about
This
that.
is fun. Okay, I love where this is headed. So that's an illusion, right? It's funny, like, and this is one of the things that I think I get most excited about talking about, which is that people feel like they need to do this in order to maximize the amount of things that they have to maximize their
Mm,
own benefit.
yeah.
And that's not the way things really work.
Mm,
Um, there's this phrase, it's called like I think it's called like the self-interest paradox,
mm,
where, and I've read about this a bit and I've written a little bit about it, but um, the basic premise is that the more that you sort of myopically pursue your own self-interest,
Mm.
over time, the more you're sort of working against your own self-interest.
Wow,
And the
fascinating.
more that you walk towards um, others and fighting for the interests of others, the more over time you actually do your self-service.
Mm.
And so I
Mm.
believe that principle to be so true. And when you kind of take a second to think about individual relationships or families or companies or governments or civilizations, you kind of see like the more that they focus on the self
Mhm.
and the less they focus on others, the more vulnerable those institutions or groups or individuals are, right? And
Mhm.
so I want people to see that like that's not the way to live.
Mhm.
You can be successful financially, you can be at peace with yourself, you can have a greater sense of joy if you're not doing this all the time.
Mm.
So we want to prove that. We want to prove that through the business that we've created here, the nonprofit. And by the way, kind of think about the model that we've sort of built for a second. We're not really asking for this necessarily. We're not asking for things because it's like a virtuous circle that we sort of created. We
Mhm.
call it like non-sacrificial giving, right? So
Hmm.
if you join the nonprofit, the Thrive Initiative, if you become a Thrive Initiative member,
Mhm.
yes, you're giving your extra change, but if you go out one night to one of these shops and restaurants, you're getting more in savings
Right.
giving, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And if you're a shop or restaurant, you kind of recognize the value of building a loyal customer base that
Mhm.
associates you with the positive cause. There's so much research that supports the fact that people want to do business with businesses that are invested in their community, that are associated with a cause, that
Yeah.
have a heart and a purpose, right?
Right. Right.
So so for the businesses, they're happy to give up the discount because they see the value in that customer base and being associated with that cause. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
everyone, and then our business, um, you know, the co-working business is the beneficiary of some of the brand equity that's associated with being the catalyst for this movement. That's not by mistake. Again,
Right.
we want to prove the case. Hey,
Wow.
if you're if you dive in as an organization and try to bless your community, great things are going to happen in return, right?
Mm.
So everyone in that wins. We're not asking for any sacrifice. We're
Mm.
just bringing people together, and we're using creative business models to um, to create like I said, a kind of this virtuous circle, like a win-win-win, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And yeah, we're excited about it.
Man, that's a term that I don't think I've heard before. Non-sacrificial giving.
Uh, I
Um,
I I haven't either. I maybe I made it up. I'm not sure, but, but it applies to what we're doing here.
Yeah, I want to take time just to mention to the audience that, while there's probably a lot of things you can address, that's an example of an idea worth spreading. One of the things that's hard for people who are not really familiar with TEDx to understand is the concept of an idea. An idea is a thought, a paradigm, a seed that you can spread and share with other people. It's not the talk itself. It's not a keynote presentation. It is the spreading of an idea. And anyone can have a good idea. And that's the spirit of TED is that you don't have to be famous. You don't have to be doing $700 million a year in revenue in order to have an idea that can be worthy of spreading, that can benefit others from hearing that idea.
Mhm.
Non-sacrificial giving is a interesting, unique idea worth spreading. And I'm sure there's others. And so you want to think about if you're watching this, what's your idea worth spreading? And maybe consider putting that forth. Go to TEDxAlexanderPark.com. There's on the contact form, you can submit your idea for it because we are looking for the best ideas within our community, the best ideas from within our world, and kind of bringing both of those together at this event, February 23rd. Oh, sorry, February 25th in 2023. February 25th in 2023. TEDxAlexanderPark.com. I'll put that up here. speakers per TED guidelines will have 18 minutes or less to communicate their best idea. Here's the science behind that, is that that is usually where people stop paying attention anyways. And so to be able to distill a concept down into 18 minutes, the amount of work that it takes for a speaker to take 30 years of wisdom or 20 years of life in business and distill that, let alone a century of research,
Mhm.
down into a concise talk is what makes the event so compelling and energizing. And of
Mhm.
course, we'll have entertainers there as well, just to add fun to the mix and joy to uplift our community. My intention behind organizing this event is that we would collaborate more. I found myself being in Gwinnett County for the last 5 years, and I we lived in Johns Creek, we lived in Swanee, we lived in Lawrenceville, Grayson, and I feel like I'm missing a place. And each time I feel like many other communities across the world, like there's some siloing going on. And I would find something from the North of County that I would love that there would be something in the South of County and vice versa and all these things. And I just thought, like, what could happen if we started to collaborate a little bit more across cities? How much more could we help our community? Started to see like there's duplicate services. What if we started to partner together? So one of the intentions around organizing this event is to bring our community together. The other intention is to uplift the community. It's one thing to know that there's this business Thrive Co-working in the area. There's another to get to know some of the beliefs and the philosophies that drive the success of an organization. If we get to know the beliefs and the philosophies that drive the success of the organization, we can start to incorporate that into our own lives.
Sure.
And it would just win is what happens. And so that is the intention behind organizing this event. So if that sounds like you want to present an idea, you want to join the team, we're building a team. We need all types of volunteers for the day of, for operations, for social media, for technology. If you can build a website, please help us build this website, because right now it looks like I designed it because I did.
We might have some folks that can help with that. Let's talk after.
There we go. There we go. Please help us. We would love that. And so, just wanted to pause there and just use that as a perfect example, because I hear a lot of people that number one, they don't know what TEDx is, which surprises me. Number two, one of the things I forgot to mention, that these talks are going to get uploaded to the YouTube channels, which has 36.5 million viewers. Okay,
Wow.
so the amount of exposure that you get to that audience is exhilarating, and the in-person audience gets to watch the live show happen and be a part of it, and have discussions with the speakers and the presenters in order
Mhm.
to infiltrate these ideas into our community. So I just love that part of it. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. That's like one of the biggest pieces. But they usually don't know what it is, and then they usually struggle with an insecurity of thinking like, well, do I have an idea we're spreading? And just through this conversation, you shared probably two or three that are worthy of developing and refining and spreading.
I've gotten more.
It's like I got more where that comes
I
from.
haven't even gotten into.
I
It's funny
know.
that you laying that context down really motivates me to sort of talk about the ideas that underpin this. We've talked about some, but there's
Let's do it.
others.
Let's do it.
Yeah, if you want me to dive in, I'll do that.
Let's dive in.
Okay,
Let's
that's a
go.
fun
That's what
little
we're here
pivot.
for.
So,
Yeah.
um, here's what comes to mind. There's another phrase that we use, which we call societal efficiencies. Okay,
Okay.
and the concept of the Thrive Initiative is an example of what I again call a societal efficiency. What we've done is we've taken a traditional model of sort of like getting attention for a business, right? Because every business spends a significant amount of money trying to capture people's attention
Mm-hmm.
and to hopefully convert that and monetize that into business.
Yeah.
A lot of that's done on social media spend and advertising on platforms, all over the place. And we're just kind of, as companies in the same industry, just sort of shouting off the rooftop or the mountaintop at the same audience and just hoping to kind of get people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
All of that marketing, all of that promotion, all of that spend, what does it actually produce for society? Not much, right? You don't you don't build much with that. It has an important function, and the people that perform those functions are immensely valuable. We need them, we use them, of course. But I thought to myself, what if there's a better way to get people's attention, right? And ultimately, another phrase, I guess I do these things a lot, it kind of translated into this idea where I was like, what if we made the promotion of one's business synonymous with the promotion of others' interest, right? What if through promoting the interest of others, we can kind of concurrently promote one's business? If you can do that, and if you could redirect some of the resources that you typically will channel towards advertising and marketing or just discounting or pricing strategy, if you can kind of suck some of that energy away and leverage it to do good, then you've kind of created a societal efficiency. And so that's what we've done here. And we're the piece that kind of makes that happen, right? So when local shops and restaurants, when they sign up, they acknowledge and recognize, and part of the value prop for them is they're like, hey, you know what? Like, these guys are going to actively promote our business, because that's what we do. When we tell the story of the Thrive Initiative, we're telling the story of these local shops and restaurants. They're the heroes of the story, and it encourages people to patronize them, right? So instead of them having to spend so much to promote their business through traditional channels, they just offer a discount. We bring the awareness, and then that discount motivates people to donate their spare change, right? And so we've kind of created that efficiency that I mentioned. And that's really the foundation of it. And this isn't the only model. There's other ways to do this in different industries and with different businesses. So
give me an example. Do you have an example from like a different industry?
Yeah. So there was one idea that I thought about for like 30 minutes. So don't expect this to be fully baked out, but
that's all right. We won't judge you. This isn't the TED Talk.
But this is an illustration, right?
Yeah.
I used to have a property management company, and our property management company, it grew to be a pretty good size. We had about 1,000 single-family houses that we would rent out for folks.
Okay.
And we have, at any given time, like a fair number of homes that are sitting vacant, because there's just turnover time, and markets kind of ebb and flow. Sometimes there's a lot of vacancy and slack in the market, and sometimes there's not. But understanding the business when I was in it, at any given time, out of the 1,000 houses, we'd have 40, 30, 50 houses that were sitting vacant for a week, few weeks, month, couple months. And I did some service work with an organization called Out of Darkness. And what they would do is,
good organization.
You've heard of them? Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
And so they would help take women that were in sort of like stuck in this sex trade, kind of sex trafficking sort of world, and they would like rescue them. And they would need very short-term housing accommodations that are sometimes hard to come by. And they've had to buy houses and spend a lot of money, and the people would only be there for a few days or a few weeks. They had like this little mobile pack set up in their space. So it's like you just bring the pack, bring it to a place, and they're good for the week, and then permanent sort of accommodations are made. And I'm over here thinking, man, like I just had a business that had houses all over the city. And if we had like a strategic partnership with them, we could have promoted our business to all of the people that they're messaging to. We could have associated our business with a brand that had equity, that could, again, engender loyalty from our customer base. And we could fulfill a need with an asset that we had that was sitting underutilized, right? So it was just this natural efficiency. Again, it's like a societal efficiency, where it's like thematic, where like this is how things seem to be. If you kind of do more of this, right, hands wide open, and less of this, you're able to kind of think about those ways where doing good and doing business have this natural sort of synergy and cohesion. So that's another example, and there's probably countless more, but we're early stages here. I don't have the capacity to kind of really give that too much attention. But yeah,
It's beautiful. No, it's an interesting concept, and that was helpful. I see Robert here. He says, "I'm a store manager at Mavis Tires and Brakes, so I can relate to everything you're talking about."
love that.
Definitely, definitely. And there's so many angles. I can see the application of that, in other industries as well. It's a very intriguing thought. It kind of reminds me of like, actually, it's actually right here on my shelf. It's this game called Disruptus. I don't know if you ever played it before, but you get these cards and they have images on them, and you have these different prompts on if you're going to innovate what's on the image, or if you're going to combine elements within that image with other elements in another image, or if you're going to completely disrupt it and just like think of something totally that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
And apparently, I have my friends tell me I have the tendency to come up with stuff that's already been created. So
No,
I'm
it's funny.
like, I'm like, I'm like, oh, we should do this, and I'm like, yeah, that already exists. I'm like, ah, dang,
That's
but
awesome.
but why it came up is because when you're saying that, I can see how there's pieces within what you're saying that can be powerfully applied into other niches, right?
Yes.
Similar to
Yes.
that game in the cards, and
Yep.
and so I definitely think that's just a great share, man.
Yeah.
Um, you know, let's talk about Gwinnett and the area. If there's one thing that you would love to see our community do more of, or what would that be? What would that be?
If there was one thing I'd like to see our community do more of, that was your question, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's fun. Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if this is like the thing, because I think a question that profound would require like a significant amount of reflection.
Mhm.
But the first thing that comes to mind is to engage in challenging dialogue and
Mm.
sharing
Mm.
diverse and dispersion sort of like
Mhm.
viewpoints in a
Mm.
way that's good spirited and that is open and collaborative. Um, I don't love to say like, oh, like, I'm not one of those guys that says like, well, we used to and now everything's terrible and this was great then and it's right.
Back in the old
Yeah,
days.
yeah, it's not my style. So I'm not going to kind of compare the era that we're in with any other, but I do feel like the season that we're in right now, sort of societally, is one where it's really increasingly challenging to have a different viewpoint
Mhm.
and to communicate about it.
Mm.
Um, I think that by the design of sort of this reality that we're in, that there is like this sort of this force of nature that actually requires collaboration. I think that like the complexity associated with every element of reality makes it so that we need each other to optimize whatever it is that we're doing, whatever element of life that we're in, business, family, work, whatever. And so governments, but we're doing less and less of that.
Mhm.
We're leveraging less and less the viewpoints of someone that sees things differently, and we're sort of like consolidating around these little tribes that
Mhm.
only see things in a sort of a homogeneous way. So
Mm.
I would love it if we would get better at having hard conversations and respecting the opinions of others and watching the amazing things that could potentially come of those interactions.
I love it. Dude, this is like the perfect alley-oop for TEDx. Like, I mean, it's one of the ways to do it, because one of the things I love about the guidelines that they have in place is there's no political agendas, there's no pseudoscience. So you got to actually have some proof of what you're talking
Yes.
about. Can't just go up there and let it air. And then there's no self-promotion. And
Mhm.
so we're not doing it to, generate business from the talks or anything. We're literally doing it with the purity of spreading the idea. And in the safety of that container, you have the freedom to express
Yes.
whatever it is, and there's dialogue around that. And one of the things that I've heard is common within these events is you'd have your name, but you wouldn't have your job title.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Right, and so people are not like, "Oh, okay, of course, this Democrat, because he's a politician, is here. Of course, he's gonna come from this perspective." Like, you can literally have a conversation around an idea with someone who you may have never talked to because they voted differently, or
Right.
because they lived on a different side of town, or because they don't have a fancy title that you respect. But yet, because you both can connect on the idea, you can be open to a discussion around that,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
that's the beauty of this container. And so, like, oh, I'm so excited. Head over to TEDxAlexanderPark.com. One thing I want to make sure that we mention is that as of now, like there is 100% in-person audience limit. Okay, so we'll definitely sell out the event. We made the tickets available now, and so we encourage you to grab your tickets early before it sells out. Okay, because once they're going, they're gone. And then we'll put together a wait list, and I'm just gonna be honest. Like my intention is like we'll have like 1,000 people on the wait list, and I'll just beg Ted to let us lift this sanction so we can let more people through the doors. But right now, first come, first serve. Oh man, you hit the nail on the head. That is near and dear to my heart. I about wanted to hug you
I
because
love
I'm
that.
like, yes, yes, yes. I'm a speaker by trade, and it's challenging to speak freely when the culture is so hypersensitive
Yeah.
and people will quote unquote cancel you. And
Mm,
the ability to sit down and hear a perspective that is contrary to your belief is what I feel like is so needed in this world right now. If we
mhm,
could sit together and hear something that makes us ball our fist and clench our body because it's so anti what we would have said or even what we believe, to be able to endure the challenge of hearing that conversation till you get to the point where I believe we have far more in common than we do apart. That
mhm,
is where true innovation happens. It's the yin and the yang. It's the negative and the positive. It is the white and the black. It is the
mm.
opposites that attract and create the polarity and the creativity. That
Yes.
is how we have innovated. Somebody thought it was a stupid idea to look up in the air and say we can fly up there,
Mhm.
but yet over the course of time obviously we accomplished it. So you
Yeah.
have to be willing to listen to things that sound stupid in order to innovate and progress a society.
Yes.
So dude, yes, hit it on the head, man.
I
Hit it on
like
the
it.
head.
Everybody out there, Daryl did not tell me to say that. I did
I
not.
didn't he did not tell it. Thank you.
That's so great.
It's
It's funny thinking about the topic a bit more. Um, it feels like increasingly, and I want to be careful with that, but it does feel like increasingly like people's identity seem to be tied to sort of who it is that they oppose,
yeah.
um,
Oh yeah.
versus like
Oh yeah.
what they stand for and believe,
Oh yeah.
right? And
Oh
so
man, that gets
I
the
guess to
fires
kind
right
of like
there.
add
That
to
gets the fires right
my
there, man.
prior comment, I think like a way for us to accomplish what I was just mentioning is kind of to be reflective a bit and to say like, yeah, like, is that the source of my identity? Is, do I find who I am and do I find like passion in sort of opposing these other people? And if so, like, is that healthy or is it not? Right.
Right.
If you could do that a little bit more, that's and kind of self-assess a bit more. I think then we'll be a bit more open to having conversations with those folks, and moving in the right direction.
Oof. 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 Man. You're dropping bombs today, man. You're dropping bombs today. It's so true. I heard it said this way, and I stole this from a pastor. But he said, people, how did he word it? He said, I'd rather be known for what I stand for than what I stand against.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. And there's a lot of that. I'm anti this instead of I'm for this. And just think about the the negativity of that. We don't want to build a life on a negative premise. I'd
Mhm.
rather build it on a positive premise because you can only produce more of your kind. So if you're building from a negative premise, even if you are trying to do a good thing, you're creating more of a bad thing. You're creating more separation, more division versus more unity, more peace, and more joy, which
Mhm.
is what is available to us if we just stand for something instead of be against something.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love that. Stand for peace,
Yeah.
stand for joy, stand for collaboration, stand for innovation, stand for inclusion,
Mm.
stand for diversity, stand for something.
Yeah.
I would love that. And matter of fact, all of our the people who are watching this and who will watch the replay, hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. I would love some little engagement on this. What do you stand for?
Mhm.
What do you stand for? and go ahead and drop that in the comments and put that out there in the world, because I believe one of the things that we will find as we look at the comments coming in is we will find that we actually stand for more similar things than what we might openly know about.
Mhm.
I say we have more in common than we have indifference, right? And if we start to connect on our intentions and what we value and the things that we stand for, I just think that we would have a more connected, a more innovative, a more bright, a more peaceful, a more joyous world. So, dude, time flew in this interview, but this was amazing. Man, I'd love to chat with you more. Of course, you're just a brilliant mind and an amazing human being. Would
That's
love to let people know how to get a hold of you if they want to connect with you.
yeah. Well, if you want to learn about our co-working business, you can go to workatthrive.com. We also have a nonprofit, as I mentioned, and the web address for that is changeforgood.org. And on each of those pages, there's contact pages. You can reach out, reach a member of the team. And it's actually changed the number for,
Number four. Let's
the
do that.
number
We'll put that on
for,
the screen for you.
and then good.org. But yeah, you can connect to us that way. And I'd love to talk to anyone that wants to talk about any of these things. This is sort of a passion for me. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Love it, man. Make sure you present one of these amazing ideas that you shared to us. Present it. We'd love to take a look at it and consider
Yeah.
it for our event. Our speaker applications are open probably through the end of November.
Okay.
Looking to make some decisions before Christmas time.
Got it.
And so, man, if you have an idea, present it forward. We'd love for you to do that. Guys, don't forget, head over to TEDxAlexanderPark.com. Connect with us there. We love to hear from you, whether that's from a volunteer or a donor or sponsor level, or to apply to speak or to be on a guest on this live show. We really love to hear from you. So remember that no matter where you are in life, no matter what pain you may be facing, no matter what challenges you may be facing, that there is always hope. There's always an opportunity to move forward. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I hope that today you help to see some of that light. So till next time, we'll see you next week. Peace.
See ya.